My stepdaughter shouted. "You're nobody, and your money is the only reason you matter." I shut down her account, took back the jewelry I'd given her, and canceled her trip abroad. Only then did she realize she had lost everything. Don't forget to subscribe and share your experiences below. Let's get started. "You're not my real dad." The words weren't new. Claire had said them before. Sometimes in anger, sometimes in passing. Once even with a smirk as though they were nothing more than a punchline among friends. But this time was different. Her voice carried no hesitation, no shame. She stood in the living room with her arms crossed, chin tilted upward in defiance, as if declaring a truth the whole world should already know. That sentence split me open, and in its echo, I heard the last 16 years unravel. "My name is Michael. I am 43 years old, an architect by trade, a builder of homes, a man trained to make structures withstand wind, fire, time. Yet within the walls of my own house, everything I built has rotted from the inside out. When I married Laura, I thought I was entering a covenant of permanence. She had been through divorce, abandoned by Aaron, the charming, unreliable ghost of a man who fathered her 2 children and then drifted into another city, another life. He surfaced once or twice a year, trailing promises like confetti. "I'll take you to the game. Next summer we'll travel. I'll buy you that car." Promises that always dissolved into silence. I thought my role was clear. I would be the constant, the man who stayed when Aaron disappeared, the one who bought not just gifts but groceries, not just dreams but stability. And I embraced it with the devotion of someone who believed love could be earned through labor. I paid for everything. The Chicago house, the food stacked in the pantry, the trips to Florida, the uniforms for Ben's endless sports leagues, the recital dresses Claire wore when she was still small enough to twirl for me in the living room. I woke up early to drive them to practices. I sat in traffic to make it to their school events. I bought them gadgets and clothes not because they asked, though they always asked, but because I wanted them to feel cared for in ways their father's absence never allowed. I told myself that every dollar was an investment in belonging. And for a time, it seemed to work. Claire called me Dad once when she was 9. Her voice was soft, almost uncertain. But when she saw me smile, she repeated it louder, proud. Ben, though more guarded, let me into his routines. We fixed his bike together, built a treehouse in the backyard one humid summer, spent hours assembling Lego sets that sprawled across the dining room table. Those moments were my proof that I was not simply funding a life, but shaping one. But children grow, and with age comes cruelty. First, it was small. Ben rolling his eyes when I offered advice. Claire choosing Aaron's calls over family dinners, bragging about his promises of trips he would never keep. Then it deepened. "You're not our dad," Ben said one evening, not in anger, but casually, as though reminding me of a fact I'd forgotten. Claire, who once introduced me to her friends as her father, began referring to me as just my mom's husband. The shift was slow, but unmistakable. Respect drained from their voices, replaced by a casual contempt that stung more than outright hatred. Every sacrifice I made became invisible, expected, as though money grew from my hands, as though my labor had no cost. "You're just a wallet," I overheard Claire say once, whispering to a friend on the phone. She didn't know I was in the hallway, didn't see how the words landed. Just a wallet. That phrase burned into me like acid. And Laura, my wife, their mother, did nothing to correct it. When I confronted her, she shrugged, her tone dismissive. "They're teenagers, Michael. You know how they are. They don't mean it." But her indifference was its own betrayal. Because what she called teenage attitude was not a phase, it was a creed. One she allowed to take root until it grew into the walls of our home like mold. I kept giving anyway. That's the worst part. Even as the insults came sharper, even as Claire began comparing me unfavorably to Aaron. Aaron, the man who showed up empty-handed except for broken promises. I kept opening my wallet, my schedule, my life. I told myself they would come around. That adolescence was cruel but temporary. That someday, when they looked back, they would see the truth. That it was me, not their ghost of a father, who carried them. but each year carved the truth deeper. Ben turned 16. I paid for driving lessons, insurance, gas, the repairs when he dented the car door backing out of the driveway. He thanked me once, half-heartedly, then later told a friend in my presence, "Aaron's getting me a real car soon." That car never came, but my payments still did. Claire turned 14. I bought her a phone, jewelry, the endless clothes she demanded. She once called me Dad with pride. Now she flinched at the word, telling her friends I was just some guy who paid the bills. And still I kept building. Still I kept paying. Because I wanted to believe money could buy me what Aaron's absence could not. A place in their hearts. But every act of generosity seemed only to prove their narrative true. Every bill paid reinforced that I was not family but financier. I was indispensable yet invisible. Present yet erased. The nights became the hardest. I would come home from work, exhausted from designing buildings meant to outlast generations, only to find my own family treating me like a tenant. At dinner, Claire texted under the table. Ben stared into his phone, and Laura filled the silence with excuses. "They're tired. They're stressed. Don't take it personally." But how could I not? Respect had evaporated. Gratitude had never taken root. And love, whatever love there once was, had withered into transactional necessity. I began to wonder if I had built my entire life on a lie. Aaron remained a specter. He swooped in twice a year, always with grand gestures. A jersey from a sports team, a flashy piece of tech, a weekend road trip that ended before it began. The kids adored him for it, their eyes lighting up in ways they never did for me, no matter how much I sacrificed. They believed his promises, even after years of watching them crumble. To them, Aaron was romance, freedom, excitement. I was the ledger, the bill, the grind. The cruel irony was undeniable. The man who gave nothing was loved, and the man who gave everything was despised. And Laura? She watched it all. She heard Claire dismiss me, heard Ben mock me, saw me shouldering expenses Aaron never touched. And instead of defending me, she shrugged, told me to be patient, told me it was just a phase. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. The phase had calcified into permanence. And as I stared at Claire that evening, her words hanging in the air, "You're not my real dad," I realized the truth I had been avoiding. To them, I was not father, not family, not even man. I was a function, a wallet, and one day soon I would have to decide whether to keep playing that role or to walk away. Claire's 16th birthday was supposed to be a celebration. I had planned it down to the last detail because that's what I did. That's what I always did. The party was held at a downtown restaurant, a rented hall with soft lights strung across the ceiling, tables heavy with catered food, a DJ spinning songs too loud for my taste, but perfect for teenagers who wanted to drown themselves in noise. I paid for it all, every dollar. The cake taller than Claire, the decorations, the rented space, the jewelry box tucked into my pocket. The kind of gift that should have marked me forever in her memory. I told myself this night would be different, that surrounded by her friends, lifted by celebration, she would see me not as the man who signed checks, but as the father who chose to stand by her when Aaron never did. When the moment came, I rose to make a toast. I stood there in front of a room filled with her classmates, Laura at my side, Ben lingering near the cake, Claire glowing in the dress I had bought her. I lifted my glass, looked into her eyes, and spoke the words I believed were true. "To my daughter." The room clapped politely. Some smiled. Laura's lips twitched into a practiced grin. I handed Claire the small box, the jewelry I had spent weeks selecting. Delicate, elegant, far too expensive, but worth it for the moment I thought it would create. She opened it, stared at the necklace inside, then lifted her gaze to me. And with a smile that could have cut glass, she said, "You're nobody. The only thing you're good for is your money." The room went still. Every guest froze, caught between horror and the awkwardness of teenagers who didn't know whether to laugh. My hand trembled around the glass. Before I could speak, Ben added his weight to her words. "You'll never be our father." It was a dagger slid between my ribs. Claire's words had sliced deep. Ben's drove it home. And Laura, My wife, the woman I had trusted to stand with me, only shrugged. "They're just teenagers," she murmured, as though her children hadn't just stripped me bare in front of a room full of strangers. I stood there with my toast unfinished, my face burning, my chest hollow. I set down my glass, excused myself to the bathroom, and locked the door. I stared into the mirror, into eyes that looked 20 years older than they had that morning. My reflection looked like a man already buried, mourning his own funeral. That night, the party carried on around me. Music throbbed, laughter spilled. Claire flaunted her necklace to her friends. I drifted through it like a ghost, shaking hands with parents, smiling at children who avoided my gaze, my stomach clenched into knots. When the last guest had left, when the hall had been cleaned and the family packed into the car, Laura spoke only once. "Don't let it get to you. They didn't mean it." But they did, and I knew it. The next morning, I woke before dawn. I brewed coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and opened my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keys, trembling not from hesitation but from clarity. I pulled up every account, every transfer, every bill. Claire's overseas trip, $10,000 for a summer program in France. Cancelled. The jewelry she had mocked me with. I took it from her room, locked it away. Her bank account frozen. Her phone line shut off. The subscriptions, the streaming services, the allowances all severed. Ben's car insurance gone. The payments for his sports teams cancelled. Every automatic debit that tethered my life to theirs, I cut it. One by one, I dismantled the empire of comfort I had built for them. And then I did something colder, something final. I redirected every bill to Aaron, their biological father, their real dad, the man they claimed was untouchable, irreplaceable, the only one who mattered. The schools would send invoices to him now. The credit card tied to their phone plans now bore his name. Every necessity, every luxury, every safety net they had relied on me for now fell squarely onto his shoulders. I sat back and looked at the list. Empty accounts, cancelled services, a clean slate where once I had carried their futures. For the first time in years, I felt something close to relief. Not joy, not triumph, just the cold, still air of a man who has finally put down the weight of a coffin he has carried for too long. When Claire came downstairs that morning, she smiled, still wearing the necklace. She didn't notice the silence of her phone, the absence of her bank notifications. Ben followed, yawning, scrolling through a screen that would soon go dark. Laura kissed me on the cheek, oblivious, and went about her morning. But I sat at the table, sipping my coffee, knowing that the fuse had already been lit. The collapse was coming, and I would not stop it. The unraveling came quickly. Ben was the first to feel it. 2 days after the birthday party, he stormed into the kitchen with a letter in his hand. His face flushed red. "My insurance lapsed," he snapped. "I couldn't even drive to work. Do you know how humiliating that is? My boss sent me home." I kept my coffee steady in my hands. "Then you shouldn't drive." His jaw tightened. "You're supposed to handle this. You always—" He stopped himself. "Always what? Always bailed him out? Always made sure he could coast through life without consequence?" He swallowed the rest of his sentence, slammed the letter on the counter, and stalked off. The next blow landed with Claire. She came home clutching her phone, her face pale. "They canceled my trip," she whispered, her voice trembling for the first time in years. "The France program. They said the payment bounced." I didn't look up from the blueprint spread across the table. "Then you're not going." Her voice cracked. "You don't understand. I told everyone I was going. My friends, my teachers. Everyone knows. How could you do this to me?" I raised my eyes then, slow and deliberate. "I didn't do anything. I stopped doing everything." She stared at me wide-eyed, as though seeing a stranger in her own home. By the end of the week, their phones had gone dark. The dance classes stopped. The streaming accounts they spent hours glued to were gone. Ben's car sat useless in the driveway, a shell on 4 tires with no insurance, no gas, no future. And then the bills began to arrive at Aaron's doorstep. I can only imagine his expression when he opened them. Tuition notices, overdue insurance, activity fees, all stacked on top of one another like bricks on a grave. The man who had drifted through life making promises now faced the financial weight I had carried in silence for over a decade. His credit tanked within weeks. Calls came from schools, from lenders, from companies that no longer recognized my name but his. He had been exposed. The kids noticed before long. Ben's anger turned brittle, no longer sharp but crumbling at the edges. Claire's bravado wilted under the heat of her own panic. One night, she cornered me in the kitchen, tears streaking her face, her voice broken. "I didn't mean it," she said, choking on the words. "At the party, I didn't mean it. I was just trying to sound cool in front of everyone. Please, I need my phone back. I need the trip. Please, just this once." I studied her the way a man studies ruins. Something that had once been beautiful, now hollowed out by neglect. "I didn't stop caring," I told her quietly. "I only stopped funding disrespect." Her lips trembled. She tried again, but no words came. She ran upstairs instead, slamming her door with the weak fury of someone who finally understood the cost of contempt. Ben lasted longer. He wore his anger like armor, insisting I had ruined his life, that I was cruel, heartless, unfair. But when his job slipped through his fingers, when he realized he couldn't get there without a car, when his boss stopped taking his excuses, he broke. One evening, I found him in the garage, sitting in the driver's seat of the silent car, staring at the dead dashboard. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "I just wanted to work," he muttered. "I was trying, and now it's gone." I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Actions have consequences. You told me I'd never be your father, so I stopped paying like one." His hands tightened on the wheel, knuckles white. He didn't argue. He didn't even look at me. He just sat there, silent, a boy stripped of the illusions that had once protected him. The house grew heavy with tension. Laura tried to soothe them, her voice rising and falling in endless cycles of excuses, but her words rang hollow now. She had told me once they were just teenagers. But teenagers don't beg with tears in their eyes. Teenagers don't crumble when their illusions collapse. These weren't phases. They were consequences. Aaron, of course, couldn't manage. He called Laura once, voice sharp, demanding why the bills were being sent to him. I overheard her whispering, trying to calm him, promising she would figure something out. But she couldn't, because I had already figured it out. I had given them what they asked for, their father in all his bankrupt glory. And still they came back to me. Claire first. She softened, her sharpness dulled by desperation. She lingered near me in the evenings, asking small questions, pretending she wanted to talk. Then one night she folded completely. "I don't want him," she sobbed, clutching her knees on the couch. "I don't want Aaron. He doesn't care. He doesn't answer. He says he's broke. Please, please, I'll do better. Just help me." For a moment, I almost reached for her. Almost. But I kept my distance. "This isn't about helping," I said. "It's about respect. Without it, I'm just a wallet. And wallets don't hug you when you cry." She cried harder, but she understood. Somewhere deep inside, the lesson was taking root. Ben followed days later. His defiance eroded into silence, then silence into acknowledgement. He muttered to a friend once, not knowing I could hear, "Michael's the one who really cares." It was not an apology, not yet, but it was the first crack in the wall he had built. And me? I watched it all with a strange detachment. Not joy, not vengeance, just the calm of a man who had finally stopped lying to himself. They were learning what I had always known. Respect cannot be bought, but it can be demanded. The collapse had come, and in its ruins, the truth was beginning to show. Weeks passed. Silence became the house's default language. Phones no longer rang, screens no longer glowed, trips no longer filled the calendar. The laughter of entitlement had drained away, replaced by tension that clung to the walls like damp. It was in that silence that the children began to change. Ben was the first, his arrogance fractured into practicality. Stripped of his car, his job, his easy excuses, he began walking to school, shoulders hunched, shoes worn thin. I watched him leave each morning through the window, rain soaking his hoodie, wind cutting his face. For the first time, he had to move through life without the soft cushion of my money holding him up. One evening, as I worked in my office, I overheard him on the phone with a friend. His voice was low, tired, stripped of bravado. "Michael's the one who really cares," he said. "It wasn't meant for me, but I heard it anyway, and it hit me harder than any insult ever had." Claire came next. She fought longer, resisted harder. She cried, begged, accused me of cruelty, of heartlessness. But desperation has a way of sanding arrogance into truth. Her trip was gone. Her friends had started whispering about why she never left for France, why she no longer had a phone to flash in the cafeteria. Shame cut her deeper than my punishments ever could. One night, she came into the living room while I was reading. She stood there, awkward, hands twisting at her sides. Her voice cracked when she finally spoke. "Dad," she whispered. That single word, after years of mockery, landed like a stone dropped into still water. It spread through me in ripples, sharp, heavy, undeniable. I didn't look up right away. I wanted her to sit with the weight of it, to understand that words once poisoned must be cleaned before they can heal. But I heard it, and I would not forget. Laura tried to smooth the cracks, but even she began to see what had always been true. Aaron was incapable of stepping up. He had stopped answering their calls, stopped returning emails, stopped pretending. The moment bills landed on his doorstep, he vanished completely. His credit collapsed under the weight of obligations he had long abandoned. He had no money, no stability, no will. And yet, he came to graduation. Ben wore the cap and gown Laura and I had paid for, though I had only resumed paying after months of deliberate silence. He asked me quietly, days before, if I would stand with him for the family photos. His eyes didn't meet mine when he asked, but his voice carried the weight of a plea he didn't know how to form. At the ceremony, Aaron arrived late, swaggering in with a forced grin, wearing a jacket that didn't quite fit, his hair unkempt, his smile too wide. He shook Ben's hand as though he were a guest congratulating someone else's child. Claire barely acknowledged him. When the photographer called for family photos, it was me Ben pulled to his side. Aaron stood awkwardly at the edge of the frame, a shadow trying to pretend he belonged in the light. In that moment, the truth crystallized for everyone to see. The man they had once exalted was nothing but a ghost, and the man they had rejected was the one who had been there all along. But I didn't smile for the camera. Couldn't. Because I had learned a truth sharper than any ceremony could hide. Respect cannot be bought with money, nor earned with endless sacrifice. It is built through boundaries, through drawing lines and holding them, even when those you love beg you to erase them. I thought of the birthday party, of Claire's sneer, of Ben's declaration. I thought of the years Laura shrugged and told me they were just teenagers. I thought of Aaron's empty promises, his credit ruined under the bills I had dropped at his feet. And I thought of myself, a man who had finally stopped begging for recognition and demanded respect instead. Ben's arm around my shoulder in that photo didn't erase the years of contempt. Claire's whisper of "Dad" didn't heal the wounds she had carved. But they were beginnings. Small, fragile, uncertain beginnings. I walked away from that graduation knowing I had not bought a family with money. I had forced one into existence with boundaries. And though reconciliation had **N, it was conditional, fragile, like glass held too tightly. Because once you have been told you are nobody, you never forget. And so I leave you with this. I was their father not by blood, but by presence. I carried them when their real father would not. I gave them more than money. I gave them years of my life. Yet it was only when I withdrew, when I forced them to taste the consequences of contempt, that they finally saw me for what I was. So tell me, was I wrong? Was I cruel to cut them off, to let them fall, to make them see the truth through pain? Or was it the only way to teach them that love without respect is slavery, and I had been enslaved long enough?